You sound sick.
I am sick. I've just
You're
coughing.
always sick.
I'm not always sick. I'm mostly a healthy boy.
What are you
Well,
eating?
some jerky.
Well, that's good for sickness. Hey, mom's chicken soup.
That would hit so hard right now.
Welcome to episode 35 of the Mom and Eric podcast. And today, for a number of reasons, I came up with this topic today, of course. But also, Eric was feeling superhero fatigue. So I really think
Yeah.
he hit rock bottom when it came to how much he disliked Superman, the
It's,
subject of our last.
let's not be so dramatic, but I
Dramatic.
just like was not excited at the idea of doing like Fantastic Four as another episode. It's just like we just need a break. We need to remember why we love
Movies.
movies and why we watch different kinds of movies also.
Today we're going to talk about stupid comedies and also when do comedies become less stupid? Like what makes a comedy substantive and not stupid? I actually have some questions for you too because I've just been thinking about this topic from all angles. I have watched so many stupid comedies. There are very few stupid comedies that I have missed.
Yeah, you
So,
might be more knowledgeable on this topic in general. I feel like I was struggling to find ones that were absurd, or like or that you could confidently say are stupid either way.
yes. Yeah. Well, I can confidently say that a lot of comedies that I've watched have been stupid. Although, when you told me you watched Zoolander, I actually realized that I've never watched Zoolander, which is interesting. So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about what movies you watched in preparation for this episode, because I know that I watched all of them except for Zoolander.
Yeah. The ones I watched were I started with Airplane because I'd never seen that.
Yes.
That was what that was like an 80s comedy, right?
Yeah, and that's
Um,
that's very timely that you watch Airplane because The Naked Gun came out this past weekend. It's a huge hit. It was very well reviewed, and The Naked Gun was made by the same people who made Something Zucker and the Johnson brothers, who made Airplane. So Airplane was their very first entry into the realm of stupid comedies that are packed with sight gags and really, really dumb humor, but many,
oh,
many visual puns, many so many sight gags, it's ridiculous. But anyway,
right.
yes, Airplane was an appropriate bookend for this weekend's success of The Naked Gun.
I ideally wanted to get a little more into Andy Samberg movies, but I
Yeah.
watched Pop Star Never Stop, Never
Stop.
Stopping, which is just one of the funniest titles I've ever heard
I can't ever remember
in my
it.
life.
I thought it was Rockstar Never Stop Popping.
It's actually funnier that you don't remember. I watched Zoolander, obviously. That was because I was trying to watch all these other ones. You had recommended 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I still haven't seen.
Yeah.
But a lot of them I had to rent, and I hate renting movies. So it's something that was available. Unexpectedly, I included this in the movies I watched over the last week or two, because it was like absurdly funny and stupid, but also really good. Megamind, which I had never seen.
I don't
Um,
think I've seen that.
yeah, it's a
Is that a Minion
DreamWorks.
movie?
No, it's no. It's the big the alien guy with the big blue head.
Oh, okay.
You you know you don't know you never seen Megamind? Okay, well I
No.
would I would absolutely recommend you watch that. But I included that because it was extremely stupid and funny. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, those are the movies I watch. I kind of it
And then what
seemed.
did you remember from your past?
Oh, I listed a bunch. I really wanted to watch Hot Rod because it was another Andy Samberg movie, but
You've seen it.
yes, and I've seen it. But I wanted to rewatch it because I definitely have a different lens on it now. I haven't seen it in several years, but Hot Rod was, like you and your friends will have like a movie that's like your favorite movie as friend. Like Hot Rod was our movie. Like for me and like
Really?
my closest high school friends, we watched Hot Rod maybe 7 times like
I
together.
didn't know that.
Yeah, we would watch it often like within the same year. So it was either like Hot Rod or Revenge of the Sith, but Hot Rod was a huge one. But
That's a
like
really unusual combination.
I know.
That's like, I don't know, that's like getting lo mein with, spaghetti or
Okay.
pasta or something.
Okay, you haven't seen Revenge of the Sith, so you don't know like it's meme culture, but that's where it falls into. And Hot Rod, like, man, it's just like it's such a rewatchable movie because of how simple it is and funny. I think the most recent example is the biggest example of like a stupid comedy or ridiculous premise is Bottoms. I don't know if you ever saw Bottoms.
I did not see Bottoms, but I wanted to see Bottoms. Is it a stupid comedy?
Oh, it's so stupid. It's like the most ironic movie I've seen in the last few years, I think. Like
Yeah,
ironic in that like it doesn't take itself seriously,
at
but
all.
but it's like hilarious and amazing.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what we mean by stupid comedy because I think we're already getting into it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know what I was thinking of is actually I was thinking of that first film short that you shot for your your directing class, I
Yeah.
guess. And Eric shot this film. It was right at the height of the pandemic when the pandemic started. So he had to all the film students had to make do with they weren't at school, so you had to make like, short films based on what you had. So Eric shot this very funny short using the foosball table at the Airbnb where we were staying, and he conceived of a unrequited or unknown gay romance between two of the foosball little figurines, and how they lived this existence. They hated being sent into battle to play foosball against each other when really they had secret longings for each other. But I just remember that when you made the film and you screened it in class, your professor said, like everybody was laughing, and then your professor said, "That was stupid." That was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
his first comment.
yeah.
And so I actually think that when I thought of this topic and when I thought of this topic and then also when I thought about it even more, I think that we should talk a little bit about how we are using stupid as a compliment. Stupid is a form of comedy that you actually do have to be quite successful to pull off. So my point is that there are things that are the movie that movie that I reviewed recently by the same person who Matthew Vaughn Argyle who did all the Kingsman. I said that is one of the stupid. It was meant to be funny. Argyle stars Sam Rockwell and Bryce Dallas Howard, and it's meant to be a funny spoof of spy movies. You know, it's meant to be like, oh, secret assassin doesn't realize she has amnesia and she doesn't realize it. But then it was just for large parts of the movie, it was just stupid and it wasn't funny. So I actually think that stupid is a compliment only when you get the funny thing right. You know what I mean? Like it's only stupid. You can only say stupid with happiness when you actually made it funny. But if you don't nail the funny part, then you're just stupid. And that to me is a really interesting distinction. So, any thoughts in terms of stupid comedy before we talk a little bit about Airplane?
Well, I just want to say thank you for that. I'm honored that you actually brought up that film that I made.
But don't you
Because
remember Harry saying that? Like he
yes,
was
I
like,
do.
yeah,
I remember it so vividly because we were
yeah,
on
and
Zoom
and he
class
said it
and he
with
said that.
affection, right?
Yes, yes. He was like, "Well, that was." He was like laughing while he was saying it. But to this day, that is the best film I've ever made, and it makes me.
That's not true.
No, it is. It is. Like it's just like, all right. In my view, it's like the most. It's the most fun I've had, but also like the most successful a reaction I've gotten from just making like a short film. And that's not to like, degrade my other things I've done. It's just like that's just how it is. Like throughout college, I would uh bring that up to people and people like, oh my God, Fool's Ball, like that was such a good one. Um, but it reminds me like, sort of how I got into film and media was through stupid comedic shit. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
made stupid comedic commercials for middle school, and that's what got me into editing and things like that. So I think I came into this episode thinking like I wouldn't have that much to say about these movies, but you're reminding me that I actually have a lot of personal investment in this kind of space. So thank you for that. But it's like you work with a stupid premise, but you take it seriously. That's like
Yes.
the
Oh,
way I
that was
would,
a great way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, I like, and you don't, and I also put it this way because I just watched some video essay about comedy I like, but it's just like you don't take things you don't try too hard. You're not
Right.
trying too hard to get laughs, but it sort of naturally comes out, and you put enough effort into it that carries it
Yes.
through these movies, and
Yes.
Stupid is not at all meant to degrade the works of these like genius comedians, but it's more to have a cultural understanding of what we're actually engaging with, so that we
Yes.
can all be stupid for a second and enjoy
Yes,
how
and
fun
enjoy
this
it and
movie.
have the release. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so quickly, you said you were meh on Airplane. I was completely meh on it, and Dad loves to repeat that Shirley joke over and over and over again. So when he says, "Shirley, you're joking," when
Uh,
he says,
yeah,
"No, I'm not," and don't call me Shirley, Dad says that joke all the time.
yeah.
And then the other joke that sticks with me from Airplane is the one where he's trying to land the plane and he's sweating and it gets worse and worse and worse until like buckets of water are pouring down. So, but I don't remember much about Airplane. And I actually, in seeing it in context, I actually like their follow-up efforts much, much better. The Johnson brothers, I think it is, and some so and so Ducker, like Daryl Zucker. I like their follow-up efforts much, much better because I think that they refined upon the concept. I think that Airplane was their proof of concept that you could make a movie that was so stupid and so stuffed with so many dumb jokes, some of them, as you pointed out, offensive, like really low-hanging fruit, really like low-hanging fruit, just so, so dumb and sexist and all these things. And I think that it was their proof of concept before they went on to make movies. Like they made Top Secret. They also made spy spoofs. And I actually like the Top Secret movies a lot better because Val Kilmer was in them. And Val Kilmer was hilarious. Like that thing that you just said beautifully, which is they take themselves serious. They not too seriously, but you have to be committed to the premise. Val Kilmer was the utter pinnacle of being committed to that dumb, dumb premise. And from what I can tell, from this new Naked Gun movie, which is not made by that original team of Zucker and Johnson that made Airplane and the original Naked Gun series and movies. But from what I can tell of the Naked Gun movie, which was made by the same people who made the same Lonely Island people who made the Andy Samberg original movies, there's just so much cross-pollination in the comedy world. I think that they really got the right person, like I loved Val Kilmer, and I think from what I can tell that Liam Neeson is perfect. That he is now taking his super serious Taken personality, the revenge dad who will like mow down everybody, and instead he's now spoofing it, which is the most beautiful, incredible turn for his career. So Dad and I actually want to see the new Naked Gun movie. We're excited to see. He's super excited to see it, but I completely agree with you in terms of Airplane and it being meh. So I wanted to move on to Andy Samberg movies, but do you want to say anything about more about Airplane? There's
There
really
are
isn't much to say.
no,
It
yeah,
is a spoof on disaster movies, which is, there are all these disasters like Poseidon and airplane disasters and things like that, but it's
yeah.
it's just a nothing movie.
There's a lot of like topics that I would want to get into that connect a lot of these movies together. I think the most notable thing for me that I would want to talk about is kind of the offensive jokes, which is kind of just like a little point I wanted to make, not something I really needed to get too much of a discussion about, but I don't
Would
know.
you want to say it about Airplane, but not about Andy Samberg movies?
No, just all of them in general. Like,
All of them. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of it's definitely an element of older movies, for sure, But I'd always wanted to see Airplane, and now that I've seen it, I definitely get why it's so talked about because I think it seems like one of the earliest examples where we can look at film like we don't have to like stick to a formula or stick to we could just do whatever we want. It definitely was freeing, in a way, the
Yes.
way that they approach their comedy. And I actually, one thing I forgot to mention that I actually tried watching last night and this morning was Monty Python
Uh-huh.
and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Um, and that's another one of those revolutionary comedies that like kind of flips everything on its head.
Yes.
But I actually couldn't make it through,
I know.
like
Funnier to talk about than funnier to watch.
both Monty Python and yes, funnier to talk about. Yes, absolutely. Um, but both movies, Airplane and Monty Python, I like was getting bored.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of barely made through Airplane, and then Monty Python, I was like, I literally can't stand this right now.
Yes.
So I definitely want to talk about. I mean, let's definitely get into it with Andy Samberg because I think he has a quality that keeps you latched on to his movies, like no matter what. Um, But I think we can definitely talk about what what these movies need to actually keep you interested for sure.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I do want to say something about the offensiveness thing, which is and it's so present in Monty Python, so present in Airplane, and it's present in all comedies to a certain extent. But I think that these comedies that we're deeming as stupid, the idea of the sacred cow. So there's just the sacred cow is this idea that like there are some things that must not be touched. You know what I mean? So for example, in Star Wars lore the sacred cow is that everybody has to be a Skywalker or secretly related to Skywalker. You cannot have like a woman or a person of color be a Jedi. You know what I mean? Like, I know this is stupid, but that's how they sort of feel. And so I think that stupid comedies pretty much start from the premise that there are no sacred cows. Everything can be made fun of, everything can be overturned. And so Mel Brooks was really the earliest sort of sacred cow killer from the get-go because all of Mel Brooks's movies were making fun of these established tropes where people did not question things that were offensive. They didn't. So like for example, black characters were always portrayed as criminals, in films. And so Mel Brooks would make fun of that, by having his black characters like say, "Oh, hey, where are all the white women at?" He would do. So Mel Brooks was like savage about taking on every possible sacred cow that there was and just like saying, "I'm going to point out how offensive it is and I'm going to make it funny." And so to a certain extent, getting into Andy Samberg, I think that what lifts Andy Samberg above,
Well,
so
okay, you
number
just
one,
sorry, you just introduced that. I want to get into Andy Server, but you just introduced that topic, and I want to like, it's a really quick thing I just wanted to say, which is
okay,
just that like, I think that that kind of humor does sort of impede my enjoyment a little bit. Like, it just
yeah.
like I
Oh,
can't
interesting.
like, I mean, it's not like I don't think that these jokes can be made or offensive jokes can be made. Of course they
Right,
can.
right.
But it's just like it's just a matter of like tasteful comedy, or like
Yeah, yeah,
just a
yeah.
good comedy. Sometimes it's just really hacky. So
I think
like,
it's a question of being dated, Eric. I actually
yeah,
think that
yeah. I mean, yeah,
but I think that some movies you could watch a comedy in the 70s and if the comedy is set in like a perfect time capsule way, then you're not offended because it's establishing its cultural context.
yeah,
But if you're just making sort of a lot of really dumb offensive jokes, because oh, people were okay with that back then I think that that's different. You know what I mean? And then I
yeah,
think it sticks out more as like a dated, tired joke.
yeah. And
Again,
there's yeah,
this gets back to that original point, which is stupid is only meaningful when it's funny.
yeah, yeah. And
So,
that is obviously a matter of taste.
yes,
It differs from every person, and I know people who are not offended, obviously, by those jokes, those dated jokes. But I mean, just for me, there's just a spectrum.
yes.
It's very clear. I mean, even within Airplane, you have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who's in the movie, and that's funny. He's the kid says like, "Aren't you a basketball player?" He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm a pilot." Like, that's funny because he actually is a basketball player. But
Right.
then they have the scene where they just randomly have some flashback where they're teaching, black natives how to play
Yes.
basketball. It's
Yeah.
like that's just like, okay, we're just gonna go in that territory now. So there's just a difference. I actually last year watched The Hangover for the first time. Fucking hilarious movie, so funny.
Yes.
But the offensive jokes in that were just the worst jokes in the movie. Like they just weren't
Yes.
that funny.
Yeah.
So it's definitely just gonna stick out to me.
Yes, that's interesting. Well, that's a good point. So segueing into Andy Samberg, I have to confess. So I love Andy Samberg. Like I love Andy Samberg, and I love all the Lonely Island shorts, the digital shorts. I have listened to almost every Andy Samberg interview that I can possibly think of. I can quote Andy Samberg lore. I can quote his whole background. He's married to a harpist. And he's delightful in interviews. He is delightful in his comedy. I have seen so many dumb Andy Samberg comedies. It's just so many dumb comedy moments with Andy Samberg. So I just want to confess now, right up the bat, I think that Andy Samberg is kind of brilliant as a comedian. I really do. I think that in the interviews that I've seen, I think that he also shows how hard he works. He's kind of insanely type A about like he's very, very disciplined and he will work through a bit and work through a concept. And when they were on SNL and producing those digital shorts and rehearsing them and doing, they were working really, really, really hard, you know. And so here's the one thing that I discovered though when I was, you know, when you and I were talking back and forth about the movies to watch for this. So number one, I think that Hot Rod and Popstar, I remember watching those movies and laughing, particularly Popstar. I laughed so hard throughout the whole thing. I freaking cannot remember what those movies are about. I can't remember and I read the plot lines, I read the synopses in preparation for this episode, and I could not, I watched scenes on YouTube from the movie, and I don't remember ever watching that scene. So, or I barely remembered it. Like the fighting with his dad that he does with the legendary actor Ian McShane, where his dad, you know, he plays the guy who always beats him up, his dad. I I I had the faintest wisp of memory. So I found this so disconcerting, Eric, because you know that I have a really good memory for things. Like I can remember things that happened 20 years ago. And I have an interesting theory about my blind spot when it comes to wonderfully stupid comedies, which is that if they, if they don't rise, if they don't hit those themes of like Groundhog's Day did, which we'll talk about later, if they don't become a more substantive comedy and instead they go for the quantity and they pack in as many jokes as possible, they pack in so many jokes that it's like a joke a minute, then I will not remember the story. I won't remember the story about what happened. And by the way, once I realized that I had this huge blind spot when I was like, oh my God, I don't even remember watching Hot Rod. I don't remember watching, you know, Pop Star. Once I realized that I had that blind spot, Eric, then I realized that I had it for everything. Like I had it for 21 Jump Street. I had it for 30 Rock, the TV show, you know, all these like super cram jammed. Deadpool, that's another thing. Like Deadpool, especially the second one, is crammed with jokes. There are so like Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool is tossing off a one-liner, and I could only remember maybe one an hour. My favorite one is, "You're so dark. Are you from the DC universe?" Like that's the only one I remember from Deadpool too. And so I think that that is my interesting blind spot is that I actually cannot retain that much comedy from stupid comedies. And that's sad because the only comedy that I remember of Andy Samberg's, getting back to Andy Samberg comedies, is Palm Springs because that movie is the same sort of theme as Groundhog Day, which is what happens when your existence becomes so rote. Like how do you spend your time? Do you grow as a person? Do you just resign yourself to your fate, you know? And so we only watched Palm Springs once, and I remember the whole movie, and I don't remember any of Andy Samberg's movies whatsoever. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, those blind spots you talk about are
They're
definitely,
huge.
yeah, they're huge, but mainly they're blind, you're blind to them because what you mainly remember is just the actor, like the
Yes,
main face of that
that's
comedy.
right.
And
I
that's kind
remember
of what
laughing too.
yeah, yeah, and because they're super talented. I think a common thread I've come across with these movies is just first of all the just like how many movies have these same actors. You know, Andy Samberg, Will Ferrell, huge one. Will
Yes.
Ferrell's like
Yeah.
all over the place.
Cannot remember any of the jokes from Anchorman
Right, right.
except for the plot driven one. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so many names you could bring up, but they all create this just this like kind of aura of just comedy, and
Yes.
that's what you remember fondly. But the ones that stick out are the ones that are like quote unquote serious, are the ones that leave a bit more of an impression on you when it comes to the plot. I think
Yes.
I was very surprised by rewatching Zoolander because I think my first impression of on it was not super great. But on the rewatch, like it's just insane because Ben Stiller is so committed to that role and so
Yes.
committed to doing that face. And then you have Owen Wilson, obviously, who's equally hilarious.
Yeah.
But what stuck out to me about that movie was how fucking hilarious the plot was. Obviously, I'm biased because I just watched it, but like that movie is about evil Will Ferrell designer who runs like a black market like that controls the world of fashion, but also just the world in general. Wants to
Yeah.
assassinate the prime minister of Malaysia, so he tries to hypnotize Ben Stiller who's a famous model to murder the prime minister of Malaysia. But like by the end of the movie, I want to see. I'm like, does he fucking kill the prime minister of Malaysia? Like, what's going on? Um, so yeah, it's like combining that sort of personality and charisma with like the story. I think Popstar lacked a little bit because it came out in like 2016. I think a lot it felt like dated humor a little bit. Not dated in terms of being offensive, but dated just in like LMAO random. Like let's just like stick this random thing in there. Although that being said, it was like joke after joke after joke after joke, so it was never like
Yes.
super boring.
Yeah.
But again,
I do like the premise of Popstar though, because there are so many there that's the number one thing that people follow breathlessly, like when they get invested in a band, you know. And so everybody now that BTS has all served their army service in Korea, everybody was wondering if they were going to go back to get back together
yeah,
or pursue their solo careers. And so it's not hard to imagine that there's like one egomaniac out of the whole like group that's going to go and try to pursue, but also like totally buy their own hype, you know, in terms of like thinking that they're the greatest musician ever,
yeah.
you
I
know?
think
So,
it's the I'm glad that, we were earlier kind of bringing up like the seriousness. How seriously do they take these plots and these characters and
yes.
like this comedy? And sometimes I just don't. It's just like it's like it's just a right balance. Like it's like being good at cooking. Like you want to like have the right ingredients at the right
Yes.
times and at the right, all this stuff because Popstar for me it just fell a little bit short because it was too ridiculous. Like how much they were propping up this guy Connor like being like the biggest like most well respected like artist like because while on the one hand he's like kind of being like a boy band like One Direction type thing. You
Yeah.
also have like every respected like rapper or like musical artist like doing an actual interview saying like oh he's like actually he's the why I got into music like that's funny but at some
See, it's
point
so funny to hear you talk about it.
I know like well I was absolutely stunned with how many times they brought on Nas to interview him and he's just like man when the Style Boys got back together it just like changed my entire life it's just like it's kind of funny but they were just kind of hitting that beat so many times that it just started to lose the legitimacy a little bit. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you have Zoolander, who everybody thinks he's like the most perfect male model, and he just does that face for every single gig he does. But that felt funnier to me because the cameos and like the celebrities who were talking about him were a little less like involved, even though there was fucking Donald Trump in there for some reason. But like at the end, it was like a core element of the story that he does that face to like beat Will Ferrell, in the
Yeah.
end. So
Yeah.
it just was, I felt like it was implemented a little better.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that Andy Samberg hits every single time, but I
Mhm.
do think that he is so earnest and so committed to the comedy of
Yeah.
it. So I actually think that he's one of the greats. And it is interesting. It is a little bit like a fraternity, and it's a little bit like a white male
Yeah,
fraternity
absolutely.
because a lot of the people that are in the sort of the Judd Apatow, Seth Rogen. Judd Apatow gave, really boosted Seth Rogen because he gave him his first acting role, which then gave him the sort of freedom to pursue his own comedy and to do his own writing, and then and Seth Rogen was just pumping up Naked Gun, and talking about how funny it was. They're all sort of it's a little bit masturbatory
Yeah.
in terms of and there's not a lot of room. I mean, or if there is like female comedy, it's sort of this whole separate thing,
Yeah.
which is sort of interesting to me how it exists as a whole separate thing. So funny female writers, I think like Nora Ephron, for example, they were writing When Harry Met Sally, which I caught a bit of on TV the other day, and I know that that's classified as a romantic comedy, not as a comedy comedy. It's certainly
Yeah.
not a stupid comedy, but that's like one of the most beautifully written scripts ever. I actually read the screenplay one time when I was actually thinking about writing a screenplay, and the words leap off the page. But it's really interesting how so many of the comedians like Andy Samberg and blah blah blah, and all the people who did Parks and Recreation and The Office, those people, they're all. I mean, they're kind of all white males.
Yeah,
So,
no.
you
And
know,
that's why the offensive jokes sort of bother me a little more is because the space
yes,
is already dominated by these these people, I mean, and still to this day are dominated. Like, to this day you'll find a hard time trying to come up with examples. I think that it's really great that you bring up female writers. I think there's a big surge in like female comedians and filmmakers
Yes.
that are actually making, like, that's why Bottoms was really great. And I would also
Issa
include,
Rae, yes, is
yeah,
getting up
yeah.
there. Yes.
I would
Yeah.
also include sorry, Joyride, like
Yes.
into that category.
Adele Lim.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need more
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah, yeah.
More diverse
But
voices.
yes, but when it comes to the stupid, this really the comedies that we're calling stupid, I definitely think that they've been the province of males. And or they've been almost dominated. They've been heavily dominated by males. I don't know why. I don't know why they've been sort of given this exclusive license to do sort of the gross jokes, the gag jokes. It's just like a whole but I mean, it's just been a heavily male dominated sphere. And so, I do think though that Andy Samberg, I don't think of him as a misogynist in any way. He has really strong relationships with female comedians. He often, has just he often features them on his shows and his shorts, everything. So I don't feel that way but I think that he exists within this fraternity. They're all sort of appearing one by one on Amy Poehler's podcast. And so
Mhm.
it is funny to sort of see the whole parade of these male comedians and sometimes female ones too, but they're just
Yeah.
rare. But anyway, I still say though that Andy Samberg is firmly on the side of stupid. But that now that sort of goes towards and then there's a whole category of Farrelly Brothers comedies, where Shallow Hal, Step Brothers, you can name all of them. And that whole genre of comedies, I don't like quite as much, by the way. I don't think that the Farrelly brothers are as consistent. I do think that the Farrelly brothers, interestingly enough, with movies like Shallow Hal and Dumb and Dumber and other movies like that, I think that they often do more on the stupid side and offensive side than they do on the comedy side. So a lot of times their comedy doesn't work for me. I actually did not think Shallow Hal was that funny, because
Yeah.
I just thought it was really fat phobic and offensive, like
Yeah.
really, really fat phobic and
Terrible.
offensive.
So bad.
So yeah, so bad. So anyway, so Farrelly, and then also when Farrelly Brothers tries to make a drama like Green Book, which controversially won the Oscar that one year. I actually think that it shows that their sensibilities are truly in the offensive realm, in which they'll relegate the black character who is the main character off to the side in favor of the Goomba like chauffeur in the middle. So
Right.
I think that Green Book is a perfect example of why Farrelly Brothers, when they hit on this, they are really, really good at the stupid comedy stuff. But so many times their comedy just veers off into like the sort of realm where it's just either boring or it's just so offensive and there's no
Yeah.
comedy to it. So,
Something that only just now I'm remembering that rivals that sort of space is definitely like the black space, like the black filmmakers, the black
yes,
comedians.
yes.
I definitely I love the twins. I just searched their name, but
Keenan?
The Wayne twins.
Wayans. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've done, White Chicks, Scary Movie,
Yes.
and Don't Be a Menace. I can't read that whole title. I don't know what that whole title is, but I always call it Don't Be a Menace. They're so funny together.
Yeah.
And they also have really, really stupid premises, and White Chicks especially was like one of the craziest things I had seen at that time. So, there is that space, and
Yes.
they are creating. Or actually, I don't know what they're up to now, but they've created a lot of really great works in
Yes,
comedy.
they have.
I
Yeah,
loved Scary Movie too, personally. Like, that's
yeah.
one of my favorites.
Dad actually wanted us to talk about that whole genre of black comedies when I was telling him because Dad loves comedies. A, he loves stupid comedies. B, and
Hmm.
then but he wanted us to talk about like I'm gonna get you, sucker, and that whole sort of older, a black exploitation comedy type of thing. But I wasn't familiar with that whole genre at all. But Dad again will just just lie there laughing hysterically. He will laugh hysterically at really dumb comedies. I feel
Yeah,
like it runs in dad's veins to watch stupid comedy.
yeah.
So why don't
It's
we?
funny because he likes such serious like
I
movies and
know.
serious like
Yes.
plots. So
Yes.
he likes to complement that, I guess, with
I guess he does. Yeah.
really
We
stupid
always
shit.
we always tease for the benefit of our like one listener. We always tease dad for, liking really despair like arduous movies that are involved
Wait,
like
All is
prison,
lost.
all is lost, or like long journeys that the person's definitely going to die, stuff like that. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about what makes a movie, a comedy, a stupid comedy, substantial. And I think that there's just interesting gradations of that. But I was really struggling with this because the two top examples I have of comedies that, or the three examples actually, the comedies that just made me laugh and laugh and laugh. They, I don't think that there's anything stupid about them. I guess it is what I'm trying to say. Well, okay, so here's the thing. So my pinnacle example of this is Groundhog Day, as you know. Okay, so Groundhog Day is one of my all-time favorite movies. The premise of Groundhog Day is incredibly stupid. Okay, it really is just for no explained reason. This guy suddenly is in the midst of a repeating time loop. It's just like Palm Springs, you know, and this concept has been put again and again and again that people are in this repeating time loop. So there's nothing to the premise, but I guess everything else about that comedy is not stupid to me. Like it's just not
Yeah.
stupid. And I don't understand why do why do we even use that word stupid? Like is it even relevant? Is that just another class of comedies altogether? Like is it so far away from the idea of it being stupid? And Moonstruck is another example of that too. So,
I mean, that's interesting because I didn't, when making a list of films I've seen in this kind of stupid category, I would disqualify like Groundhog
yes.
Day, even though Groundhog Day like had a,
Galaxy Quest too.
yeah, yeah. But I think because if the movie has like an emotional truth, or like just like a center, that like it touched the hearts. If it touches your heart, then I feel like it's not stupid enough. You know what I
What?
mean? Like
But that's
that's
so interesting because so you're saying that Andy Samberg's movies don't touch the heart at all.
no, I mean, well, that's the thing because you have Hot Rod, and then you
Right.
have Palm Springs. Like Palm
Right.
Springs was like a very serious, like it was a serious like character arc. You had serious
Yeah.
arcs, but like I don't know, it's just different. Like Hot
I
Rod is
know
just so
what makes it different though. Like what removes those movies so far from the Andy Samberg. And you know what? You might be right that it's an emotional investment. Like
yeah,
did this story or did this character succeed in making me invested so that I just have to know what the not only did the character arc feel meaningful to me, but I have to know that what the resolution is, and the resolution has to make sense for that character arc and for
yeah,
that plot story arc. But I think it's so interesting because some of my favorite movies are comedies, and yet they're just like worlds apart from this idea that we're
yeah,
talking about
yeah,
stupid comedy. So,
yeah,
yes,
exactly. Yes, exactly. And that's the sort of dilemma I'm coming across. I think it's like it has to do with investment, but also like their specific form, like
yeah,
I think serious comedies. Ugh, I don't know how to really describe it, but they don't like push the boundaries,
yeah,
Um, Groundhog Day does not push any boundaries, like with its filmmaking. It's a very good script and it's like great actors, like it's
yes,
got all these things set up for this for this script and this story.
yeah,
Whereas Hot Rod is like Andy Samberg fucking around, and just like I'm this is great, and the Lonely Island Boys, like they're just like let's make this stupid funny story, but like really get to the heart of this character.
yes,
Um, it's about their approach, and also about the forms that they use. And by form, also a lot of times the most noticeable thing I'm talking about is editing because I notice when watching these things like how much they really push the boundaries with the most technical aspects of filmmaking. So I mean, even in Airplane, like there's a scene where they're driving down the road and then they make a joke about how like it's a green screen behind them that's like showing the road that they're driving on, and it just changes rapidly to like they're in the woods and there's like people on horses like they're chasing them and stuff. And in Hot Rod, like they have a random scene where his brother just starts saying like beans, beans, and it's like it just turns into a music video about beans for some reason. So I feel like if we're not like doing something absurdist or ridiculous,
yeah,
but like to complement uh and be in service of the story, then it's not like pushing those boundaries. So
Interesting.
you'll
So it's
never have that
so
with Harry Met Sally because like that's very, it's a formula that they're kind of sticking to.
so wait, so that I actually don't know if I'd use the word formula, but I think you
Yeah,
just
not
hit on
formula. It's
something
more
there.
like structure. But anyway,
Yeah,
you continue.
and I think that what you're saying is, I think that what you're distinguishing is that, or what you're saying is that stupid comedies can take flights of fancy or flights of absurdity, and you accept it because you're now in this like crazy comic, absurdist world. Whereas the comedies like Groundhog Day, like When Harry Met Sally, etc., they're grounded in
Yes. Oh,
human condition and in human stories, and
thank you.
and that's what makes it so close, at least
Yeah.
close to my heart, in
Yeah.
terms of just being really invested in it.
We need
Like,
to feel like we are in a different world. We are in a
yes,
different dimension entirely. Like, and you
yes,
brought up Galaxy Quest, which arguably you could say like, oh, there's aliens and all that stuff. Like, that's ridiculous. But they start off, they're regular actors, they're normal
yes,
people that get
yes,
sucked into this world, you know?
yes.
So
And
we are starting.
even that world is a simulation of like the real world that they live in, like
Yeah.
that the aliens like made everything seem as closely skewed to
Yeah.
the real
Right.
world as possible. So I think that you are making a point then about that what distinguishes a comedy from not being stupid is the groundedness of it versus the willingness to sort of take these crazy flights, these crazy comedic experiments, these crazy like sort of comedic ideas. Like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just make it into a music video about beans because it's funny. Like
Yeah.
we just think
I
it will be funny.
And I think it could be the most impressive when like a stupid comedy is like so far off the realm of like of existence that it just like exists as its own entity entirely. Like
Yes.
Scary Movie 2 is just like they go into this house and then all this shit happens. Like it's just it's in its own world like
Yes.
entirely. And there's a random basketball scene for some reason, Like things like that.
This leads me to segue to the next a couple questions I have, and one of them in particular, I'd be interested to hear your take on them. But the first sort of thought I had about the serious, the sort of grounded comedies versus the stupid comedies is that regardless of whether you're a grounded comedy like Galaxy Quest or Groundhog's Day or a stupid comedy, you're nowhere near award consideration. So
Yeah.
comedies just never win awards. And it is amazing to me. The only time that they win an award is in TV, for the
Yeah.
Emmys or the
Yeah.
Golden Globes when they're split into categories, best musical or comedy for the Golden Globes. And that's why it's so infuriating for The Bear to be shoved into the Emmy category of
Yes.
comedy when because even though it might have funny moments, it's just not a comedy,
Yeah.
And so you have the poor Abbott Elementaries, which is a very traditional sitcom competing against a fucking drama
A
like
drama. Yeah.
yeah, like The
So
Bear.
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And so I have read many articles over the past that think that that is a travesty, by the
Yeah,
way, that
yeah,
comedies are never considered for awards. And I have to say that while I don't think it's anything that I get hot under the collar about, I actually kind of agree with that. Like I think I might be prepared to fight to the death over Groundhog's Day being one of the greatest movies of all time, or Galaxy Quest being one of the greatest movies of all time. I really would be willing to argue that till the cows come home. I don't think that Andy Samberg movies are award considered. Like I would never put Pop Star up for awards consideration, but I absolutely would fight for a campaign for something for a movie of the caliber um of uh of Groundhog's Day. And what's interesting is that Cher, who starred in Moonstruck, actually did win Best Actress for that. And it tends to be in the supporting categories, but she won Best Actress for Moonstruck. And then what you call it, Marissa Tomei won Best Supporting Actress for My Cousin Vinny, which is a really stupid comedy, And so it is interesting. There are exceptions that break through, but for the most part, comedies never get considered for awards.
yeah,
Like horror movies, by the way. Horror movies
yeah.
do not get considered for awards too. So do
Right.
you have any thoughts about that? Like it's just dumb or what?
That's a really great thing to bring up because I didn't even think about that at all. I think
I just think they're hard to do, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah, they're
I think
very
it's
hard to
hard
do.
to write jokes.
On its surface, it's ridiculous because it's like we're distinguishing between high and low art, which is like not at all, I think, what we should be doing. But also, comedies are definitely grounded. They're grounded in, what, m lots of people think are funny,
Yes.
but also just like truths. There's a lot of truth in comedy,
Yes.
because we're all comedy comes from like this cultural understanding of something that we can
Yes.
make fun of and understand
Yes.
as a society. So I guess it just doesn't blend with like the hierarchical award structure, or like award system. Because people always say like, well, the Oscars are, bogus anyways, like, or those awards don't mean anything, like really. Um, and it's
I don't,
almost
by the way, I want to stop there for a second
sure.
because I see what they're saying when they say the awards don't mean anything. But that's a statement of like they don't mean anything and that they don't know how to judge merit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
saying that they don't mean anything in the commercial world of filmmaking is actually false because if your film gets noticed, not just through box office, but through critics and also through awards, an Oscar opens up so many doors, or a nomination opens up so many doors for you in terms of your ability to finance a movie, to get a movie produced, everything like that, you know?
Hmm.
So Oscars do make a really big difference. They really, really, and Emmys make a really big difference, you know? Like when
Yeah.
you can say Emmy nominated actress, that is more likely to get people's eyes on your product. Anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
No, I think there's so many sectors of comedy that are just that are shunned or just like not as
Yes.
popular. And I
Yes.
think comedy is sort of a protest. It's the it's one of the more freeing art forms.
Yes.
And I think like official awards and these like companies and structures that kind of design these hierarchies like definitely are not just don't pay attention to that. And as a result, it's more of like cult fandoms and followings and fans of these like things that keep it going. Um, and the most hated comedians and the most hated comedies are the ones that people think capitulate to like garbage, sell out like type stuff. So actually it's funny. I guess I'll bring this up now, but I was reminded of this spoof show that nobody's ever heard of. It's called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Oh, so I'm gonna, don't worry, I'll send you some media. But
I'll send you some media.
it's
Get
got
media in the mail.
some actual, it's actually got some notable British actors in it. But what it is it's like a spoof show that makes fun of 80s like horror like drama television, network television, and it's like a show within a show. It's like a documentary about a fake show
Yeah.
that like didn't ever exist, but
Yeah.
was like terribly made and got terrible reviews and nobody ever saw it.
Yeah.
But it's taken so seriously how bad it is and like how unserious it is. But nobody's ever heard of that. And that in and of itself, that's pretty ironic.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say that's really ironic that it was
yeah,
about a show that nobody ever heard of, but nobody ever
yeah,
sure heard of the
but
show.
but I've seen it and it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's because it's so absurdist and unusual. So that stuff is just that's just gonna be for the nerds, for the
For the
uh,
nerds, I guess.
yeah, for
I still laugh at that scene you showed me from Rick and Morty.
yeah,
I still laugh at that when you're playing that guy. It's like, what did I tell you?
yeah.
Like that.
It
Like,
definitely has it has more traction in television. I like that you mentioned that because
yeah,
in TV like they just have more room to do whatever they want, and to
yeah,
go on for seasons and seasons. Whereas movies are kind of ultimately you want them to be like a theater experience, and
yes,
they're meant to be released in theaters. Not so much now, but you're supposed to take on some sort of elevated understanding of like how we make this a theater experience.
yeah.
Um,
But that to me is so goofy. Do you
yeah,
know what I mean?
absolutely, yeah,
So, like for me, a theater experience is as cathartic and as wonderful if you're all sitting there laughing your asses off, and you're laughing so hard that you can't even you can't even like breathe. You're laughing so hard. And I remember actually I actually remember going to see Crazy Stupid Love with my friend Maureen, and we were in a mall. It was the kind of movie theater where you could order the food at the plate. That was the first time that at your seat. That was the first time I had eaten in the dark, and I don't recommend it. I just don't think it's a good idea anymore. But anyway, I just remember we were eating chicken fingers and fries and watching Crazy Stupid Love, and everything about Ryan Gosling's performance in that movie was making me laugh. Everything was making me laugh. Like especially when he was going through the coaching phase and he kept on slapping Steve Carell over and over again because he was like trying to be his sensei and like really get him like he was trying to be his mentor and get him through all this. And so I don't think that there's anything more wonderful in the theatrical experience than actually going to a good comedy, but for some reason we undervalue that when it comes to awards and critical recognition. We undervalue that as opposed to a Dune or as opposed to a Christopher Nolan film like an Oppenheimer. Like it's always the Oppenheimers that are given the awards. And I actually think that comedies take just as much work. I think that they take a lot of work. I think that you have to do all the sort of same considerations and in terms of, movie making, and so that actually leads me to my next question, which I would be really interested in hearing your thoughts on, which is I was actually wondering why so many comedies are so flat in terms of their technical elements. So they don't look beautiful, they're not shot beautifully, they're not there's not a ton of effort put into production design, They're I mean they're sort of they have these like crazy flights of fancies, where you go into these like fantasy sequences and stuff like that, but they are not there's no art direction in most comedies that I know of, with the exception, and if you can find other exceptions, let me know. But I was actually thinking that one of the very few sets of directors who tries to make their movies look really interesting in addition to being funny are the Coen brothers. So Raising Arizona, and then Raising Arizona, Miller's Crossing, although Miller's Crossing is really dark for a comedy. But the reason why I remember the Coen brothers is because I remember Raising Arizona being like really saturated with vistas and colors and lots of interesting production design. Like even their little trailer home was like really lit up and like, designed very purposefully. And then the other thing is that yesterday, I turned on the TV and The Big Lebowski was on TV, and I said to Dad for what is probably the millionth time, I've never seen this end to end. I've never watched The Big Lebowski, and Dad said to me, which he always does, you would hate it. I don't know why he thinks I would hate it because I really like Coen Brothers movies
Yeah.
anyway. So my point is that Dad was laughing his head off for the 40 minutes that we were watching The Big Lebowski. He was helpless with laughter in the chair, Eric. He was laughing so hard. He was like, this is one of my favorite parts. It's the part where he puts the chair underneath the door knob to brace the door from intruders, and
Yeah.
he forgot that the door opened outwards. And Dad was like paralyzed with laughing at that scene for so long. So anyway, from what I saw of The Big Lebowski yesterday, it's a very, very funny movie. And I actually think that Coen Brothers can get super dark when it comes to things like Fargo. There's a lot of violence in their movies. But then when they do pure comedy like Blood Simple and Raising Arizona and The Big Lebowski is funny. It's just funny. But I do think that they're one of the few directors that make their movies look really interesting, visually interesting. So I guess I'm interested in wondering what you think, like why that's so. Like why do comedy directors not make their movies look more visually appealing? Or maybe you just don't know. Maybe it's just that that's just not the way that you do comedies.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it really depends on exactly what story you're working with. I'm
Yes.
sure, I mean, yeah, because I think Adam Sandler,
You were so mad about Superman not looking better. Like James
yeah.
Gunn like not making Superman look better. So this is the sort of thing that usually infuriates you, but it does not infuriate you when it comes to a comedy, correct?
No, it's not something I really consider.
Yes.
And what matters in those scenarios is if it is a comedy, it's the jokes themselves.
Yes.
So, the what makes the jokes the most memorable is how much was poured into that one joke, you know?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of times you could just remember a bit or like a joke, and it's just funny how much effort was actually put into that.
Yeah.
I think I think Popstar is lacking a little bit in this area. I think, and because a lot of times these movies are also just hinging on like you like seeing this person on screen, like we don't have to spend this much time like on the
Right.
camera work or whatever, like they're just doing their thing.
Right.
But like sometimes we will, and it's funny. Like I'm actually thinking my favorite scene in Popstar was when the gang gets back together, like the Style Boys are back, like oh we're gonna come up with new music, and they're sitting in Lawrence's like fancy ass studio that he has at his weed farm, um, which also was funny, like weed farm. But he has this back room. It's just this giant music studio, like actually has professional grade like studio equipment. I could notice like the application he was using was Pro Tools, which is like what musicians use. And like they do this whole scene where they're talking about like wow, we're getting the Style Boys back together, like it's like, do we come on as the Style Boys, or are you gonna go like on the show as like as Connor, like as your normal? He's like, no, it's like we're getting back. It's like the Wu-Tang Clan, It's like it's like they often did their solo stuff, but they were always like a part of the Wu-Tang Clan. Like that's my thing. Like I do my solo stuff, but I'm always a style boy. It's like yeah, it's exactly like Wu-Tang Clan. But then they're like, no, wait, it's not like Wu-Tang Clan at all, actually. um, but that was a really funny bit. But it was made funnier from the fact that they are in this funny. They're just in this big studio, like at this weed farm.
I think that the visual design matters when the visual design is part of the gag.
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. That's what I'm.
So like in
Yeah,
Anchorman, their costumes and Will Ferrell's mustache, the whole like
yeah,
look and feel of the sets. I think that the visual design only matters when it's part of the joke. But
yeah.
I actually think that the Coen brothers try to do something even more than that. They elevate
Hmm.
it more than that. So the scene where he first meets Julianne Moore's character, I don't remember her name, but the scene where he comes in and she's like painting and she swings in on that paint can and
Yeah,
it's actually really interestingly lit. And then she puts on this, green robe that she wears a lot. And the green robe is like beautifully like contrasting to her red wig or whatever wig that she's wearing. So I'm like noticing all these little things. Like
yeah,
I'm noticing the framing of the bowling alley and I'm noticing like how saturated the colors always are. And then they
yeah,
do really interesting fades. So I actually think what's interesting to me about the technical elements of comedies is that oftentimes it's so subtle, it's blending in with the gag, it's part of the
yeah.
joke. But I definitely find it interesting that the Coen brothers do something above and beyond that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like they just do something above. They make it look beautiful in a
Yeah.
way. So
Something where yeah, that definitely leaves room for directors and creatives to like inject their own personal style.
their
And I
own
think
personal
I
style. That's
think
right.
there's comedies that are in service of the story and the jokes, and then there's comedies that are in service of the person making it because they think it's the
Yes.
funniest thing in the world.
Yes.
And while you were talking about the Coen brothers, I was reminded of Edgar Wright because he has
Yes.
his own visual style. He likes to do
Scott Pilgrim. Yes.
yeah, he does wacky things with the camera and
Yeah.
like he directs. Like you could tell like he had a just like such a specific way he wanted to cover a scene.
Yeah.
And that aids to the comedy. Um and something I was actually surprised by with Zoolander was how like kind of polished it was. Like,
Oh, interesting.
it was made 2001, so it's
Uh-huh.
got like that kind of turn of the century like futuristic like kind of vibe, but like the fashion fits for that movie are so good, actually. Like any outfit that Ben Stiller and Owen Wilson are in is
Yeah.
just the funny, and they always make fun of how the love interest in that I forgot her name, but they always make fun of her for looking like bland and boring. Um, and their fits are always good, and then they have these like model like walk off like competitions, and that's like shot in like a really funny way. So and up until the climax too.
Are there any other movies that you particularly wanted to mention specifically with? Because I have some parting thoughts about comedies and stupid comedies in particular.
First off, I want to rattle off just a couple like things that were brought up and that I don't need to get into at all. This is Spinal Tap was funny just because everybody thought that that was like a real documentary. I think
Yeah.
in the difference between Spinal Tap and Popstar, like Popstar like just felt so fake. Like they actually gave up on the whole documentary thing like way into the movie.
Yeah.
But this is Spinal Tap was like this is a documentary. Like this is about
Yes.
this band, that doesn't
Yes.
exist.
Have you
So
seen the
that
trailer for for the sequel?
oh, what for Spinal Tap?
Uh-huh.
Oh, there's a trailer? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a trailer. It's really
Okay, well, I'll
funny.
have to check that out. Is it good?
Yeah, it's really
Okay,
funny.
okay.
They're so
Well,
old.
yeah, I'll have to. Yeah, they're super old. Um, yeah, Christopher Guest is a really great comedic actor. SpongeBob, I had to mention. SpongeBob is like
Yes,
such an absurdist, like a concept for like a show, but also the movie is like brilliant. It's
it
like
is brilliant. I agree.
I don't know the last time you watched it, but you should definitely rewatch that. I
SpongeBob
wanted,
in general is brilliant.
yes,
It
yeah,
is like so hilarious. That is like the dumbest comedy, but it's a high, high, high art of stupid comedy.
yeah,
That's like stupid comedy at its peak, as far as I'm
absolutely.
concerned.
Oh
Yes.
well, very well said.
So, a couple parting thoughts about stupid comedies, to wrap up this episode. I will just say, number one, I have a deep emotional appreciation for all comedy and including stupid comedies. Like they have given me moments of relief and release during times like if I just can't imagine a world where you're not able to laugh to the extent that I have laughed at these comedies, and so I tend to prefer the not stupid ones more. Like, because they really resonate. I think I'm just in awe of how they managed a balancing act between really saying something true and profound about human beings and about this crazy life that we're living. And also how they managed to just make us laugh with all these different gags and different jokes. I will say that my appreciation for comedy, and I'll say this is like uh, just sort of my, this is really in the nature of sort of final reflections on this, but um, I cannot picture writing down a joke, Eric. Like, I can't picture sitting there. I can't picture sitting with somebody and I can picture I have said things that make things peop other people laugh, and I have like quipped and like done little jokes here and there and teased people, and said little things like that. But when it comes to actually writing down a joke, you know what I mean? Like comedians like John Mulaney have to do, or I think the closest I can sort of imagine it is if I were to tell a story about something that happened or that happened to me. I could totally see blowing out the elements of that story to make it absurd. But when it comes to doing what Andy Samberg does, like I can only picture him in a room when he was making Hot Rod. I was like, oh, you know what? Why don't we just have it be a music video? Like why don't we just turn it into a music video? Oh my God, that would be so funny. I cannot picture doing that. And so I think that I see comedy as this black box that's just absolutely like beyond my reach. There are many things that I admit that I do not do well. Definitely can't play sports, definitely never been able to like shoot a basketball, any of those things. Very little coordination. But I have to say that as secure as I am as a writer, as a general sort of personal writer, and as much as I can imagine telling a funny story, I can't imagine doing what comedians do when they actually put together a movie and or even an episode of a sitcom, and then they have it be joke after joke after joke after joke. I know that those things are created by writers' rooms. I know that they're sort of created by people riffing, or whatever. Although there are some circumstances where comedians will just sit down and write the whole thing. Like I think that Bill Hader wrote most of Barry, himself, but I just can't picture doing it. And I was wondering if you sort of feel that I know you have taken a comedy writing class and I have friends who have taken improv classes and have had to perform stand up and they're like the hardest thing is like writing the actual jokes.
Writing comedy is so hard. I think because you have to just fully commit to knowing that what you're doing is funny or like committing to working on it to
Yeah.
be eventually funny, Like it's so interesting to think of how these movies that we've all mentioned are probably all movies that people shed like blood, sweat, and tears over.
Yes.
But it's like such a stupid thing.
Yeah.
And to kind of like forget about how stupid it is for a second and just think about finishing it and getting it out to the people is interesting. I like for the foosball movie, it was I was just like a weird idea that I had.
Yes.
But here I am. I was like I'm just like recording to myself these lines of these like foosball players talking to each other and talking about how much they love each other. and I'm like, why am I? What am I doing? And at the end, when I finished the film, I was like, man, this is probably just gonna bomb. Like nobody's gonna like this. And then I play it in class, and everybody thinks it's funny, you know.
Yes.
And my teacher was like, "Did you like? So who did you get to voice the guys?" I'm like, "I voiced them all." And he's like, "What?" Um, so
We
it's
did that. We have done riffs between us sometimes where we
yeah,
will like I so this is an interesting point about how comedy might be sometimes like a product of two people, sort of
organic.
organic, right? But there was that one time when you and I were at Din Tai Fung and we imagined this whole absurd like
Yeah,
mockumentary like training video for Din Tai Fung,
yeah,
like where people were trained in black ops procedure.
yeah.
It was
I've
like,
had
okay,
many.
table
I've
99 is ready.
I've had many kind people tell me in moments like that, like, "Wow, you could be a comedian." But there's steps, you know.
Yes.
There's the inception where you have this funny idea, and then there's like,
Yes.
"Oh no, we're actually making that.
Right.
We're like sitting down and we're gonna actually film that." It's like,
Right.
"Oh, okay." Like it's like, no, we gotta be serious about this.
Right. Right.
I have a really funny idea right now for a film that Carrie even said he'd be down to act for. Um, and like I just have to sit here and be like, man, so do I have to sit down and like write this on a script and like
I know.
think
That's
of
the
these
thing.
jokes and like think of how funny this would be? Like, but what if it's not funny? You know, I think that's it's like the biggest risk to take. And and now, you know, thinking back to when we were just talking about awards, like it's actually it is a travesty that they're not like considered, you know, highly for awards, given how much effort that takes
Yes.
and how much work that is.
I have to say, I find it terrifying. I find the idea of terrifying. I would love nothing more than to be in a writer's room for 11 hours and like coming up with the plot and thinking about where the characters are going. But my biggest fear is not being funny, And so this is like when I was first starting to write film reviews when I was in college, and I had to interview with the guys, who ran that magazine, the Arts and Entertainment magazine for the weekend, and they were legendary for writing this hilarious thing called the Film Forum Bulletin, the Film Bulletin. And so every week they produced this newsletter which talked about the films that they were screening through the Film Forum, and their little capsule descriptions of the movies were hilarious. They were so, so funny. And I was terrified to go interview with them about writing film reviews, And then in the first time I literally like nervously hand them like a draft film review, and I had made a joke, about Mel Gibson's acting. And then one of them is like reading it and he goes, he goes, "This is funny." He goes, "Are you funny?" He goes, "Can you do more of this?" And he goes, "Can you produce more of these jokes, like when you write film reviews?" And so that to me, by the way, Eric, encapsulates the challenge of comedy, which is that can you it's not just that can you be funny or can you say funny things or can you have funny ideas? It's just exactly what you said, which is can you execute it? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, can you
yeah,
execute it to the point where it becomes a thing? It becomes like a film on screen or a sitcom on screen. So
yeah.
for the people who actually execute this, and I'm amazed that Seth Rogen can smoke as much weed as he does, 8 hours a day, and
It's because he
produce
smokes as much weed as
but that he can smoke as much weed as he does for 8 hours a day. He is pretty much nonstop, high, and yet he produces as many films and as many TV series as he does. You know what I mean?
well, yeah, and
That's crazy.
something that you're reminding me of, which is hard to remember sometimes just because of how many names, big names, like have their own comedic talents and their own solo efforts that they do.
Yeah.
But comedy is a very collaborative art form. I mean, you're working
Yes.
with people who you have the same sense of humor, and a lot of these, you know, like the Coen brothers, like they have their own sense of like what they think is funny. And also, you know, enjoying comedic movies, despite the fact that over the last week, these movies I watched alone. I would have much rather watched them with other people
Yeah,
because nothing is more fun than watching a really funny movie together with a bunch of people.
I
And
agree.
and nothing is more devastating than putting on a movie and it not being funny and it not hitting
Yes.
and completely ruining the vibe. It's like one of the
Yes.
worst feelings you could have. And that's why I'm actually always terrified of like showing movies that I think are funny to other people because it's like
Yes.
if they don't find it funny, then oh my God, I'm screwed. I'm the worst person alive. Um, but it's a collaborative effort. And it's something that you do with other people. And
Yes.
that can definitely rid a lot of the anxiety that comes with how difficult comedy is for sure.
Yes, if I ever watch Big Lebowski from start to finish, I don't want to do it alone. I actually want to watch it with Dad because that 40 minutes I watched yesterday was as number one, I was thinking, holy shit, this is like an Oscar caliber performance from Jeff Bridges. I have never seen, I think that Jeff Bridges is one of the greatest actors of all time, and I have never seen him as committed or fully inhabiting a part as he did the
Yeah.
dude. Like it was incredible how good he
Something
was.
something I would want you and Dad to watch is that is that show I mentioned, Dark Place.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, and you could just watch the first episode because actually that's all I've watched. But it's uh it's absurdist and amazing, and I would be curious if either of you guys would like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
maybe we should watch The Big Lebowski together
Mm.
when we're all together at the end of August. That would be funny.
Yeah. Those are some
But
of my favorite experiences watching movies with Dad too. Is
yes,
watching comedies. You know,
yes.
we both have the same sense of humor, which is great.
Yes. So this is, I guess I'll just, end on the point of I think that comedies are really hard to do well. Stupid and not stupid comedies both are really hard to do well. I wish that they would get more recognition for how incredibly challenging they are. I wish that there was more diversity, that they weren't quite so siloed. And then last but not least, I'm really grateful to comedies. Comedy, I've had this really existential question going on in the last 8 years or so about whether or not. So the Trump presidencies have been a gold mine for comedians. People make so much fun of what's happening, all the absurd things that are going on in the Trump presidencies. And I've often wondered, this is a central question of my existence right now, which is whether or not that humor is both helping us cope, but also distancing our dis creating a distance between us and what the true stakes are. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that comedy can have that effect, which is I definitely feel so healed by the people who make fun of Trump and make fun of the ridiculous people. The JD Vance videos were hilarious during the campaigns, like all the people making fun of JD Vance and like having like blacked out eyeliner and everything like that. And so at part of me found it really cathartic and healing and a welcome relief. And it also helped me put them into perspective because I knew how ridiculous and pathetic they are, but they're also fucking evil. They're doing evil things. And so I sometimes wonder if the comedy had an effect of distancing me from like how serious this all was. But overall, I'm really grateful. I think that the people who write comedy, who make, comedy movies, I have a deep, deep, deep appreciation for them, like a deep, deep, deep appreciation. And as you know, I tend to really revere the comedians that I love, like the John Mulaney's. Used to love Louis C.K. before he became a sexual, he was out as sexual. Used to love Dave Chappelle before he became so transphobic. I mean, there are just so many comedians who I really revered, and I just have the greatest respect for their craft because I think it's super, super fucking hard to do what they do. So that's my sort of final thought on that. Any final thoughts from you on comedy or stupid?
Um, yeah, like I said earlier, it's like sometimes it could be the most freeing thing to see.
Yes.
And there should, especially right now, there should be more room for works like that.
Yes.
I think they're dwindling because um they're either raunchy or they're kind of not that widely popular.
Yeah.
But you know, it's nice that like Naked Gun is going to be, you know, seen in theaters.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
box office hit too.
yeah, yeah. So, would love to just see more. I would love to really see more of those movies, but also just um, more diversity, in those movies because I
Yes.
think once you, because it is comedies for everybody. And I think right now what's thriving in terms of comedy is the space on TikTok where people create skits and they create videos and content. I mean, that's actually YouTube is where I gained my love for comedy with Ryan Higa, who made like some of the greatest sketches on YouTube, very well written too. Um, and if we could just have um, you know, the like that kind of space in film too, that would be great. But it's just it's very disheartening to see like that space be kind of ruined sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
you
this
know,
was fun though. This was
yeah,
fun to talk about comedies, and it's always super fun to talk about. Like when you tell me, about a funny sketch, or you send me a funny sketch, or but sometimes just when you recap it, like that Rick and Morty bit,
yeah,
with the squirrels, sometimes
yeah.
when you recap it, I think it's funny before I even see the actual bit because of the way that you share it. So I'm really grateful that we got to. I actually think this episode was a great idea.
No, it was. I'm glad we got to talk about something like this.
Yes. So anyway, I love you, Eric. And to
Love you too.
all of our listeners, I hope that you are finding some things really, really funny because God knows we all need it.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.